A few years ago, you said on Trigonometry
Yes.
that there is a bias at the BBC. Has your opinion changed?
Oh my God, we're going straight in on the career-ending stuff.
Yes.
Is there a bias at the BBC? Well, I was only talking obviously about panel games and comedy shows, and I did perceive that there was one then, and I still perceive there is one now, although I will accept radio. I think Radio 4 is actually quite generous and seeks to redress that balance. I think they're aware of it, and I think they know of the structural challenges that they face. I think BBC TV comedy has been a woeful failure on that front for most of the time that I've been a stand-up comic. The difficulty of saying as much, of course, is that it just sounds like sour grapes. You're just going, I haven't been on Have I Got News for You? There can only be one possible reason for this.
You've written stuff that's on not going out. You wrote with
I've written
Leah,
stuff for completely neutral stand. Lee Mack's amazing sitcom, which in a way is quite right-wing insofar as it's very traditional. It's a family structure, and it doesn't have all sorts of forced diversity. But yeah, I did one Mock the Week and no other panel games. And there aren't that many other right-wing comedians. They have always said, and there's probably a lot of people who read it and go, yeah, that's true, that they would love to have more, varied political views on, but there just aren't any right-wing comedians out there for them to use. And that was the point at which, they literally did say that. And that was the point at which I said, well, now I start to feel a little bit like, hello.
Insulted. Yeah. There aren't any good ones left.
Yeah,
that's what we're saying. Well, there's you, Jeff Norcott, and Henning Vane. Would that be one?
Well, Jeff has certainly been on Have I Got News, and he is, we're slightly different politically. I would say he's right of centre, but he's kind of more in the, you can argue, is it a jokey premise anyway? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's not a criticism. It's just a different, we all plough our own furrow, whereas my stuff is more esoteric, I think. And then Henning is brilliant again, but Henning, I don't know what you would call Henning. He's very sui generis, really.
Yeah, German.
Yeah, German and kind of sneering at the English for everything being a bit hapless and pathetic,
Yeah, well, fair play. It's I used to live in Germany and nobody knows who he is out there. I would always say, there's this great German comedian, Henning Vane, and no.
Benny Hill, wir like the Benny Hill and the Norman Wisdom.
Das liken wir. Wir liken the Benny Hill. You work.
They like Steptoe, I think, or something they like, or maybe Hancock. I think they like some old 60s sitcoms, yeah.
Gosh, I'm not surprised. You were concerned at the time on Trig that the BBC would lose the trust of the nation and the world. Has that gone further? How are people now?
Well, perhaps you're thinking of the way they've covered Gaza, which is, I'm not fully equipped to speak about bias within a news organisation. It does seem to me that there seems to be a preponderance of evidence to suggest that the BBC news department do have a pro-Palestinian bias, and independent organisations have pointed to, I think, about 1,500 examples, this is, as I say, I'm out of my comfort zone a little bit. I'm happy to give you my opinion, but it's not an expert opinion.
Yeah, I'll just delete that bit.
Yeah.
Go on.
There are different cultures within the BBC. This is the thing. I don't know who was it who said politics is downstream of culture. Was that Breitbart, I think, maybe first said that? But
I don't know.
But that's a thing within organisations as well as countries. The office politics is downstream of the office culture, And it's not easy for an individual to come in at the top and say, here are the new guidelines, and you can pin them up on the notice board. You're not to be beastly to the Jews. But, if that's how they are, that's how they'll be, and if that's in... one of the famous examples was the extent to which the Guardian newspaper was the in-house newspaper, and probably still is, and was just understood.
So? Is that
well,
right?
It was within the BBC generally, and I know within the comedy department to some extent as well. Not that there are plenty of people I know, friends of mine, who regard the Guardian as captured, as a sort of what is the term they would use, like the
Gorniad.
Yeah, but it's a safe, like, it allows a little bit of steam to come out. It allows a little bit of left-wing steam to come out, but no one's going to overturn the regime. That kind of thing, like Russell Brand would say, that they're just two buttocks of the same arse, the right and left. You're not going to get any distinct revolution or a Chomsky type analysis. Well, they wouldn't, if the Guardian was going to change anything, it would be banned. So I'm not saying it's like a really hard left bias. It's just a slightly, they're dubious. I mean, all these things with Israel and Gaza, it's fascinating if you want to just detach it from the horrors, that both sides have experienced. But it is interesting. I didn't realise until somebody started sharing a clip from Yes Minister that was about 30 years old, or maybe Yes Prime Minister, in which it's explained by Sir Humphrey to Jim Hacker that it's kicked off in Israel in 1981 or whatever it is, and Jim Hacker is we need to stand by our allies, Israel. And Sir Humphrey says, well, I'm afraid you're probably aware, sir, but the Foreign Office is traditionally an Arabist institution. Our sympathies are with the Arabs. And this is, this is the deep history. There are different layers. You all think, Western democracies tend to support Israel and look the other way during its so-called atrocities, or whether you believe they are. But maybe things are changing, and as demography changes in this country and in America, their governments. But actually, in this country, more traditionally, the Foreign Office as a civil service department was sympathetic to. We had connections with Oman, we have the oil industry to think of course. We have very strong relationship with Jordan, whereas Israel was seen as a sort of an American garrison or an American aircraft carrier almost that was sort of settled in the sea of sand, And from that point of view, America is our traditional enemy. That whole special relationship thing is on very thin ice and always has been, because America did what it could to destroy the British Empire, during the World War era, and so there's no love lost there, if you know what I mean. So it's never quite as simple as it seems, I think. And the BBC is just another place that has its culture.
Do you think it has become or is likely to get worse? Because you mentioned demography changes.
Yeah.
That's there are not many Jews in this country. Very few. I know there's
stable population, I would say, roughly. Yeah.
It's something like 0.4% or something of the country.
Is it that few?
Yeah,
it's I'm surprised. I guess I work in an industry where they preponderate more. But
would that be comedy or media?
Both. Splash. I would say both. Yeah, comedy. I think. My Jewish connection. Do you know that I'm half Jewish?
No.
I'm
sorry to hear that.
That's all right. I'm half Jewish through. I was donor conceived. I was the product of artificial insemination, and I only found this out about 6 years ago. It's just coming up to the 6th anniversary, in fact. So in 1964, my parents, after 8 years of frustratingly fruitless engagement, decided to get some tests done. It turned out my poor old dad, who's still alive, bless him, at the age of 94, was shooting blanks, and so they went to a fertility clinic in central London. Yeah, synagogue. That would have been like the beginning of a serious man. Yeah, what can we do?
Yes.
But so they went to a fertility clinic, and it was run by a Jewish man called Bertolt Wiesner and his wife, Mary Barton, who was not Jewish. And he was a very eminent fertility scientist. He'd left Austria in the maybe the 20s, actually, I think, and worked in Edinburgh for some time, developed pretty much the world's first reliable pregnancy testing kit. He had sort of serious game in the area. And his wife was a regular obstetrician and fertility clinic. She'd run them in India and stuff as well. And anyway, nobody knew at the time that Wiesner himself was providing the vast majority, the lion's share of the sperm that was getting these women pregnant.
Oh my God.
So I was one of the last of a vast cohort, and they are continuing to come to light through DNA testing. This is how I learned. I had no idea. And they were that wasn't like bad practice. It was emphasized to them that they should not, to my parents, were told not to say anything because it could be stigmatized, it could be psychologically damaging. And also, I suspect, perhaps in hindsight, because they were worried that it might eventually get out that, there were just hundreds, if not over 1,000, possibly little Wiesners running around.
Wow.
But so I've discovered that I was Jewish, and I managed to. It was a gift for a show.
Because he's Jewish, this Wiesner character.
Wiesner is an Austrian Jew, as he came over to Britain in the 1920s, long before fascism. Anyway, he wasn't a sort of refugee, and just seeking scientific advancement. Worked at Edinburgh University for a while. And he knew many of the great figures in eugenics and stuff, and he knew Aldous Huxley, and he knew H.P.S. Haldane and people. And so it's quite an exciting sort of lineage to have, but also a little bit alarming that, as far as I know, I could be bumping into brothers and sisters, from one day to the next. You never know.
Imagine if I revealed now that.
Of course, it's always possible. But the thing I think is that did click with me that it was, I had entered what is so traditionally a Jewish profession.
That's
It's
funny.
quite funny, yeah. I think Jews are I think you can make a pretty solid case that stand-up is Jewish. And my other DNA is Celtic. That's through my mother's side. Yeah. And the other stand-ups in this country is like the Celtic folk tradition, Billy Connolly and, people like that. So I was destined. Weirdly, although he was a scientist, and I know about 70 or 80 of my brothers and sisters now, none of them have gone into science. Loads of them are in media and, as I say, leveraging a superficial facility with language to earn a living, journalist, PR, that sort of thing.
Interesting. Bloody hell.
Yeah.
I did see there was a video on trigonometry about
that one, yeah.
I just didn't get time to watch that because I watched the other full episode and it wasn't in that one.
Sure.